as much from that as we should. It's all right to be entertained and entertaining, but we're in a need for knowledge, because knowledge really is power. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Pass it back.
Somebody gonna be sitting in we got to make
Open seat there. Brandon, that's something you can do is an open seat up here. Sit there. Anybody want to open seat here?
Do you have any mouth that's like okay. You want to talk that? Yeah.
one more open seat up here.
One more open seat up here. Dawn. This is right here.
Oh, perfect.
First name.
You want to take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your first name. Just your first name.
Did the brother come back with the Bible? Okay, let me take a peek.
New King James.
Oh, okay. Well, let me use it anyway. Maybe I could recall. I should be able to recall by memory, but I wanted you to see it in this. The introduction is beginning with Moorish signs. I'm going to explain the concept, then I want to get right into self-image psychology. It is what we are missing as a people in the cultural circle that we travel in, and in the total collective, which is essentially where we almost learn church, and where we're being very well continuously miseducated. School. That's not to say that the fact of skill learning is not important. It is, because we need jobs and need to work. But the concept educate comes from the Latin word educare, or an educo, which means to draw out that which is within. That tells you something about your nature. It's why that concept is important. Okay, let me revert back here. This is the hieroglyphic found in Wallace Budge's works. I forget which book. I think it's in the 2 volumes of Egyptian Gods. It's not in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the commentary, or the Book of the Dead, rather, the commentary, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I've already re-looked. I lost my notes. The reason I out of the books that I read of Budget, I don't know which book it came out of, but it's in one of them. So if you want to verify it, and the reason this is important to verify, A, because when Drew Ali started the Moorish Science Temple, he told the Moors that the concept Moor came from the word named Moabite, the 2 sons of Lot's daughters. I don't know how he came to that conclusion. It's just, it escapes me how he could see 2 Cushites being the parents of people that were already in Egypt. So, anyway, even the Moors in the Moorish Science Temple are pretty much still under the influence that the Cohen concept begins and stops at Moabite. The word Imabwe is given in some Hebrew dictionaries or encyclopedias.
Can you spell that?
Got a piece of my pocket. It's somewhere. with the W on it, similar to Kiswahili. Okay, found in the Jewish dictionary, earmarked under that of Hebrew language. The pronunciation is that of the African articulation. In the regular theological dictionary, you'll find the word Moab, Moabite, means teacher. So I'm still mystified as to where Durali got the interconnection of this concept as an ethnocentric concept. One of the sons was named Moab, the other was Ammon. But I do want to pre-state that when you pick up the Bible the first time, you're talking about religion. When you pick it up the second time, you're talking about knowledge, which is hidden in the religion, clothed in the symbology, the parables, and the analogies, the stories, the scriptures. The evolution of the divine being is the one created in the beginning. The atom of the Christian theology is not the atom we're talking about. We're talking about the atom that you're composed of. Okay? So, Moabwi means teacher. That's fine. It also esoterically means head. So we'll get into that later. In the story or an genealogy of Ham is where we want to begin looking at this from the Bible. But before we do that, write down black or Moor, because that is in the dictionary. It has been there a long time. None of my teachers, God bless all of them, showed me that word. The Spirit had to show it to me. Nobody in the Moorish Science Temple told me so. Nobody in the Moorish American Institute told me that word was in the dictionary. Two reasons. One, the Moors in the Moorish American Institute were at that time in denial that we were Africans. Another amazing misconclusion. There's a tremendous problem, I'm sure you all are aware of it, but that it still prevails is the astonishment that the African in America is still in denial, still phobic about being black. When we get into the 6 great fears, we'll deal with that 7th fear that Napoleon Hill did not talk about in his wonderful book. Okay. In the same dictionary, you'll find the word Moor, M-O-O-R. I want you to look at that. I was supposed to have a dictionary here. I'm supposed to do all this stuff right here in the classroom. Is there one there? Okay, that looks like a spelling book, but give it a try anyway. Turn to the B to see if you can find black Moor. In the genealogy of Ham, where my head was before I got it. That is Ham. There is no Ham, but Cam or Kim. Why the concept of the Kemetic land of Egypt is being used now by our scholars. I'm in full agreement that they are correct, except they do not delineate the concept to move it towards an ethnocentric concept. We're not talking geography, okay? We're talking blood and chemistry, genetics, bone and flesh, is what our ethnocentric name holds for us as a part of our inheritance. This is not a religion. This is a line of human descent. Why, again, it is important. Why it is at the very center of the positive self-image psychology that is not in anybody's textbook, including Naim Akbar. Okay. Cam. You all remember this guy's name. Arabi. Remember, another famous black man. Okay, now look at this. Put the K back. Now I'm supposed to make two M's there. That's Cam. That's Moore. That's Rabi. In Charles Fillmore's Metaphysical Dictionary, he has the concept ham. And in the esoteric definition of ham, means black fire or spirit. This is a direct transliteration of this glyph. The isle is known for, symbolically in everybody's culture, for wisdom. Everybody has the isle is wisdom. This is Inomo, mouth. In the Bantu philosophy and language. This is the symbol of power or electricity under the auspices of water. Water is electrical. Otherwise, how would it generate electricity if it did not contain electricity? This is the oldest language on planet Earth. On planet Earth, not the oldest language. The oldest language, of course, is symbology, sin, which is what we're going to jump right into in a minute here. This is one of the spellings. This is in the New English. The Old English spelling was this way. And this way. There, you'll find this concept in everybody's language. Mir in Arabic, M-O-H-R in German, in Latin, Omari, Omar. That's where our scholars stopped in the golden age of the Moors in terms of defining the origin of the word Moor. I want to read something in the golden age of the Moors, which is not that accessible. It's not easy to get. Now, for goodness sake, what did I put in the class? Leo Africanus, if you all remember, was a young black man who was adopted by a white boy. Went the story went, that far back. King Henry, quote, the navigator, unquote, and I put that in quotes, is the one who adopted Leo and gave him the name Africanus, which is a Latin term. But it's important because two factors. One is that he was a chronicler, not a historian. A chronicler is one who writes down his experiences and his notes as he busies himself around the country and countries. He's a kind of traveler. But his notes are important because of when they occurred. In the chapter by Scobie, there's a footnote given, not a footnote, but an important note given at the very beginning of the chapter. The Moors in Portugal's Global Expansion is the name of the chapter in the Golden Age of the Moors by Edward Scobie. For all the Negroes or black Moors are descendants of Cush, the son of Ham, who was the son of Noah. But whatever difference there is between the Negroes and the Tawny Moors, it is a fact that they are all of the same ancestry. That's about as clear as an ethnocentric conceptualization of your blood, brain, and genetics that we have. Of course, there's further elaboration. The missing facet of that has been an etymological tracing of word terms, the root of words back, past Latin, past Greek. Okay. Even though Yakinan and all of them acknowledge that those are not the original languages, for whatever peculiar reason, they stopped there. Okay. But they were doing, and still are, doing historical fact, and that's important. But the fact should have some applicable place in our consciousness. The rationale of his story, when you find the correct point of view, as I mentioned previous Saturday, it's not what we're after, his story. We're after the records of the past, which is in the individual and the collective subconscious. In other words, your subconscious holds not only your past deeds from the time you first slid out of your mother's womb, but even before that, when you were here in another body, another age, such of time. That is to be found through the great records of the universe in your private meditations, with as much information as you can gather to go into your subconscious, to get into the subconscious of God. That's the book of life. It's spoken of in the book of Revelation, and in New Age thought it's called the Akashic Records. The point of fact of more is that it can be verified. The descriptive that should have been put in the dictionary should have been dark skin, broad nose, big lips, and furrowed hair. Then, in parentheses, and every variation thereof, which includes everybody down here. We are the descendants of the original human beings. That's what Melanin is verified, and the new archaeological finds by Leakey and a few others, and what our parents, ancient parents, knew all the time. Why is it important to understand your history? Because history alters consciousness. Your yesterday has determined much of your today. That's how important history is in just functioning from Monday to Sunday. The less you know about yesterday, the less you can recall about yesterday, the less you're going to be able to get done today. If you can't remember, you're supposed to go to Grandma's house and pick up $500. You're out $500. But that's yesterday's history. If Grandma told you you have an inheritance coming, and she told you that 10 years ago and you forgot about it, you can't go back and get your. The sum total of all organized thought is what Baraka stated in his book back in the 60s, is what history and culture really is. It's a very interesting summation. The sum total of all organized thought. And the cosmological sciences agree and verify that as a fact. What we need to understand is that we are replicas of the universe. And that whatever is in the universe is within us. And whatever is within us is in the universe. That's basically the sound, definitive, and rationale of the law of correspondence. Okay. As we explained not last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, the definition, what I gave was the description of war. The definition of war is Lord of the earth. I misquoted, it is not found in Genesis 29, but in Genesis 42, the story of Joseph, which is what tells you about and verifies for you the identity of Joseph, the identity of the African as Egyptian, and the verification of the name as it is defined in the Bible. The name is not there, it is defined. In other words, the definition is there. In 2 verses, verse 30 and 33. This is after Joseph has been sold by his brothers. We know whose history applies to that little story. Into slavery to the Egyptians. And then he works his way, I won't get to the whole story, you can read it yourself. There's the chapter 42. he gets to this point where he does something very important for the Pera is an ancient word for Pharaoh, and is given a commission where he works himself up to this status, governor of Egypt, where he's in charge of all of the grain and wheat in Egypt, literally all the food. It's a high place for a Jew boy to reach in an African culture. But the important factor about identification there is that his own brothers could not distinguish him from, quote, the Egyptians. Very interesting. I mean, if I walked into if I were in Cleveland, it would be the west side. Here would be Bucky. We went in an all-white neighborhood looking for my brother. I think I could find him. So we see two things happening here. The key there in terms of Moorish science and Masonic science, because that's what we're talking about in part, because we're talking about the same two bodies of knowledge. What the Masons have is what you were supposed to inherit from your ancestors. That's what this country is being run by. We'll pay a close attention if they show it like they did with Bush when they inaugurate and swear Bill Clinton in. Watch this white boy walking through these arches with that fez on his head, and make sure you see that Bill Clinton's mother or his wife will put her hand on top of his hand when they swear in his mom. Okay. Even if it's his wife, it's still his mom. Okay. Very important in terms of Masonic symbology. Okay, I don't want to get too far away. I want to clear this up. Every now and then I'll revert back to it. This has to get into the center of content. This doesn't go in easy. You know, when I first time I heard we were Moors, I heard it from a pimp on the street, a dude named Champ. Yeah, man, you know we was Moors. No, man, that's about a year out of college. Not like you know we was Moors. So that's how I got my education. You know, he didn't tell me anything. And as I went on, here and there, something would keep putting this information in my way. A brother here, and a brother there. The first brother I met with a title was in New York. Brother Eel, who played on the same team I was trying out for. And he didn't tell me nothing. It was the tremendous cloak of secrecy that these Moors were embodied in. You know, that they wouldn't tell you much. Even the ones that were in the temple and the ones that were in the institute. You know. But as I got into it, I found out why. We'll deal with that a little bit later, because it's in one spiritual sense it's an obligation, in another spiritual sense it's a point for us, a point of negligence. Or why a family, a father with 5 kids, who's been in the Masonic order 25 years and raised his 5 sons to get to be 21, 31, and they don't know who they are. That's negligence. You know, there's no oath between heaven and earth for a black man or a black woman to do that to their children. And one of them, because I think, did not tell his son who he was, lost his life out there being foolish and living in the foolish and ignorant world. Identity is very important. Okay. Lord of the earth. The definition of this, we'll get into this. This is another conceptualization of the same one, but it deals with a graduation definition. We'll get into that later, but I want you to see. The other synonym that is applicable to this is that of navigator. Your parents were the first shipbuilders, the first ones who mapped out the oceans, and the first ones who devised the compass and the square to find their direction from point A to point Z. We are still navigators in this science. You live in a body composed of 82.6% water. You breathe an element of both air and water. still navigating upon a great shore. When you get in the spirit, you get up into a higher element of water. You've got to learn how to navigate. You've got to take your vessel somewhere. What's the parable is applicable in the Bible? When Jesus had his crew out there on the ocean or river, and they were in Peter's boat, and Jesus fell asleep, and suddenly the ocean went storming and rocking, and Peter ran over to Jesus and shook him and woke him up. He says, "Master, we perish. Ye of little faith." Remember, that was Peter's vessel, Peter's body. He went up and woke his Christ up in his body. You must wake your Christ up in your body. You see, because that's the one who's going to save you down here. Very important to understand the inner universe, the inner God, the inner man, the inner truth. That's where we're going to get universality from, where the Muslim, the Hebrew, and the Christian, and the Negro will all meet at the same table and agree. When we recognize God is within you, working through you, as you. That's real religion. And whatever you need is to be provided through you by the God within you. That doesn't mean another God can't give you a favor every now and then, but they're around. But the whole idea is to awaken to G-O-D. So, any questions about this particular bit of information right here? Where's an inspiration? Yes, sir. Here? Yeah. You didn't get this? Okay. The owl represents wisdom. This represents the mouth, which is the orifice or organ of the power of the spoken word. But we'll get into as we get into the 12 glands, and the 12 faculties and powers of man. And this represents mind, electricity, or energy. All of the components to become Lord down here, you already have it. Then what's missing? We'll get into that. What's missing? Okay. Every now and then I'll probably interject some ideas along the way about the concept of more, because all we're doing is expanding up on this concept. The three missing keys. I think I gave this last week. Identity, self-knowledge, self-revelation. Did anybody listen to what was it? Channel 30 around 9 o'clock when Miriam Makeba was on? It's remarkable. It's happened to turn cool. And his brother, the group called Black Mambasa, were singing, "Reveal Thyself, Almighty. Reveal Thyself." An excellent affirmation. Very, very, very important. Very powerful group of men who send out an irresistible power, even to a very peculiar human being in South Africa. A European who does not have much humanity developed. And I kind of tripped out on a thought that came to me. I was watching something, and Murphy Brown, and at the end of the program, all the Europeans start trying to get in the circle, clap their hands and dance, and we all seen white boys dance. And the only thing that makes any sense, the only reason it created sent them down here So y'all can teach them how to dance. But that's rhythm. Very important. They are adopting and being influenced by the African's rhythm. And believe me, rhythm changes things. Really, very, very important. Identity, self-knowledge, and self-revelation are the missing keys in the Afrocentric culture in the Western Hemisphere. Why we can't agree. You know, we can't agree with the same people. You know, I'm Hebrew, bro. Young brother met in Cleveland in the Woolworths dime store. And I forget how the conversation started, but I was trying to explain to him that there are 4 glyphs in the name, what he was calling Yahweh. He went back. The name is Yahweh, bro. Yahweh. Okay. But we are given to religion because it's so intricately interwoven in our culture down through the ages. Our parents invented all of those religions. You know? So it's a part of our genetic consciousness. A big part of our subconscious. But what is most important, we have a natural inclination for mystery, for secrets. Beneath all of that believing, you really want to know. So that's where the urge comes from. We are 7 in the numerical chart. The vibration for the complete, finished human being. The number 7 is our vibrational number. The number of more. The perfect body. Okay, those 3 are very important. We're going to keep elaborating on erasing 1993. Okay. In the dictionary, Latin dictionary, you will find this word. Oh, wait, I won't start there first. Okay. Let's get right to the other word first. We did. You won't find that in the Latin dictionary. Let's see if I got find that. Oh, is that yours? Oh, okay. I went into China Black Madonna's bookstore a couple of days ago and peeped in Dr. Yakanan's book, Africa, the Mother of Western Civilization. And he has a hieroglyphic for sin, which is the word for symbology in that particular book. If you have it, or if you want to get it, let me see if I can find the deal without spending too much time meeting through here. I don't think I mentioned the definition of sin. And interestingly, no one asked me, or did I? Don't let me slide past you with a word that you haven't heard before. Ask me what it means. Sometimes I'm running my mouth so fast, I'm not keeping up with my brain. You remember that Jesus was recorded as, when he was asked a question, he kneeled down and wrote on the ground. If you're interested in another way to prove that this was a black man, an African, who was the savior of the world, this is through etymology, another way to do that. This is the first paper, not cave walls, the ground. Where men began writing on. It's nearest to their hand. It makes sense. The drawing of a representation of an image, the drawing of a representation of an image on the ground. How many were here last night? Saturday I did this lecture. Please raise your hand. I meant to ask it first. Okay, so some of you all did get the other information. Okay. Sin is where the word symbology comes from. Symbology is the language of nature. Symbology is the language of the universe. It is the language of the Creator. It is perhaps the only perfect language down here, no matter what Mussolini is saying. Because it is the language that any human being can learn via his or her spirit, wherever he or she is. It is the language that speaks to nature from nature. That would be a perfect language.